One of the more difficult political journeys over the last decade, in my view, has been watching the North American division navigate North American politics with the church. And I've appreciated Dan Jackson and Alex Bryant's work on that, and now with Alex being in charge and Kyoshin Ma, they've got a tough job. And it's in this ethical world, frankly, that many of those issues sit as you try to reconcile a world church view of reality and a North American view of reality. It's a tough balance to do. This morning, we're going to hear from the North American division. We're going to have a substitute of a substitute. But my friend Angie David, as I know her, is here, Angeline Brauer. Alex Bryant, as we're still in that stage, got COVID a few days ago. And so Kyoshin Ma was assigned to take his place. Up until this morning, we thought that would happen. And now Kyoshin Ma has got COVID. And so Angie is here. And I was tempted to say it's when you get a surprise upgrade that I thought that may not sound right. So I won't talk about upgrades, but I'm delighted to have Angie here. Angie's been on our campus for a number of years, was one of our students doing her Doctor of Public Health out there, and one of our campus leaders on campus, and appreciate her commitment to the church, and has risen far now to work as the health director for the North American Division. So we're delighted to have her with us to share Alex's words as modified by Kyoshin and now as modified by Angie Brauer. So Angie, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Hart. It's really an honor for me to be following after him because when I was a student under him, that's very intimidating. It's still intimidating, but it's an honor. And I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Winslow at that time too. And so I just feel just incredibly blessed to be in the trail. And it really just amazes me, the journey that God takes you on. So important note, be nice to your teachers and your administrators. But thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to represent the North American Division. I know Dr. Bryant and Dr. Ahn really wanted to be here. They really wanted to share their heart with you. I hope that I can do them justice. I did ask Dr. Ahn this morning, so what is the key message you want me to share today? What's the one thing you want me to tell them? And he said, very readily, he said, we need to work together. That's what he said. And so there's the message. So the North American Division, we have this desire to really partner together. It's important to us. I think you might even say it's part of who we are, is this sense of togetherness. And so that's a lot of what I'm going to share today. By the way, I know we just had lunch. I have been told by certain people that I have a very calming voice. You're very calm when you present. What that means is you put me to sleep when you present. So if you kind of take a nap, just think of it as a gift, okay? But if you gain something today, if there's some message that you hear today that speaks to you, I hope it is that we want to be together. So we know, or we are told in the scriptural account that when God created human beings, he created us in the image of God, and he created us with three parts: our mind, body, and spirit. Each of these parts composes every single one of us. It is what we are made of. And these three parts are indivisible. Well, I am going to tell you that I don't think this is the full picture. I think there's something missing in this picture. And I know we talk about it a lot, and we talk about making humankind whole. But if we're missing a part of that wholeness, then are we achieving our desire to make humans whole? So I'd like to share with you, in the Genesis account of creation, we do see the mind, the body, the spirit. We see those. Now, in Genesis chapter 2, what I find is that missing part. We see that God created our frame, our bodily frame, and then he breathed into us the breath of life. And I like to think of that as God not just giving us life so that we can live and move and have our being, because he wanted to intentionally tell us, I want to be connected to you. So I'm giving you my own breath. And then we also see that he gave us the brain, the mind, with the capacity for our emotions and our thinking and our thought processes. But this is the part that I think we often miss. Is you see, when the first man was occupied in his work in the Garden of Eden, there came a point where he realized that he was alone. Now, when we think about that, that's kind of astounding, because in the Adventist church tradition, we believe that Adam, who was the first man created, that he actually was able to speak with angels face to face. We also believe that he was even able to speak to God himself face to face. And yet, we are told in this account that he felt alone. Astounding that we can be in the presence of God, yet be alone. In fact, God himself said the words, "It is not good for humanity to be alone." And so he created Eve. He gave him companionship. He gave him someone who was similar to him. Not an exact replica, but close enough that they felt that they were now together in community. Together. A key point, a key part of what makes us human. Well, in the next chapter, in Genesis chapter 3, we see that there was also, unfortunately, some destruction and brokenness that entered into the world. And if we were to look at that chapter really closely, I think we would see that all four now, not just three, but all four parts of what makes us human were impacted. Our mind, our body, our spirit, and our relationships. And I'd like to suggest that this brokenness is what we're seeing manifested in the world today. Have we experienced physical brokenness in the world? Have we experienced mental, emotional brokenness? Have we experienced spiritual brokenness? Now, what has COVID taught us about relational brokenness? Haven't we seen that come out in a very pronounced way? So this brokenness that manifests itself in the world. Well, I know that's a very simplistic view, right? That's just four things that went wrong. Well, we do know that the world is much more complex, of course. You can get into the details. Now, this is a research study that was done among children who were facing childhood obesity in the UK. And this is a few years old now. But I like to show this graph because it demonstrates to us the complexity of life that we are in, the complexity that surrounds us. So there's the child in the middle. And their health experiences impacted, yes, by their own behaviors, by what they like to eat or don't like to eat, by whether or not they like to exercise or, get sleep or, whatever it is, all those personal choices that, yes, even children can make. But we see there's so much more. We see that a child can be, of course, impacted by their parents and their family and the decisions that are made in that context. We see that the culture that they are brought up in impacts the choices and the decisions and the exposures and the risks and the prevention that the child is exposed to. We also see how many hours do our children spend in school, whether online these days or at home. Those influences impact that child's health experience as well. But also their local environment. What about their religious gatherings? Food at religious gatherings, potlucks, do those have an impact on our children? Oh, yes. Sometimes good, right? Sometimes. What about the influence of a Western diet, religious obligations, lack of leisure facilities? So the things that they actually interact with in their environment. And then we have the macro environment, the bigger, broader picture of things, marketing, labeling, where the junk food is placed in the grocery aisles and so forth, right? So very, very complex. And this is just a child. Life doesn't get easier, does it? It doesn't get more simple, does it? And yet, in this complexity of life, we still come down to those four elements of who we are: our mind, our body, our spirit, and our social connectedness. And if we can manage to find those a healthy environment for in those four areas, perhaps we can start impacting these as well. Sometimes it's good to look at the big picture, but we can never forget the details either. Sometimes it helps us to strategize when we look at the big picture, but then we also remember that the strategy then gets into the details of how to influence and impact change. So the healing ministry of Jesus has been described as disinterested benevolence. How do we approach that complexity? I believe that we have a model in the work of Jesus Christ, in the ministry that he did. He exemplified, by his perfect example, a healing ministry that has been called disinterested benevolence. In the book Philippians chapter 2, we're told this about Christ. Though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Christ's ministry was one of disinterested benevolence. In other words, his life was without selfish interest, but ever marked with that disinterested benevolence. He healed people with nothing else intended. No hook, no back doors, no underlying, unseen, ulterior motive. He healed because he was interested in them. He was interested in their good, interested in their health. There was no condition to his healing. He was full of compassion for all. And the stories that we see tell us that. Now, yes, there were times where he went further, and we'll look at that. So why did he do this? Why was he interested, I should say disinterested, in the other things of this life, of the lives that he was touching? Why was it that he acted in disinterested benevolence. Well, it is the need of people that drew at his heart. Even if they didn't want anything else from him, he still healed. We're told there are stories where he fed people bread and fish. And he said to them, I know you're not coming to me because of me, but because I gave you food. But he gave them the food anyway. It wasn't always about him, even though he longed for them to know him. But he healed them anyway. This is, those of you who don't know, Dr. Kyoshin An is a New Testament scholar. So he's given me some really interesting notes that I want to share with you. So he says this, in the 4 gospel accounts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, altogether 89 chapters of text, there is one place where Jesus tells us about his own heart. So only one place in those 89 chapters. This is in Matthew 11, 28 through 30. It says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. I am gentle and lowly in heart. So gentle, meek, and humble. He was not overly impressed by a sense of his self-importance. Although, we could argue he was the most important human that ever lived. But he was not overly impressed with it. Lowly, he's accessible. Gentle and lowly. That is what Christ's heart was. And it was in his heart to meet the needs of people. We are told that there were entire towns and villages that he would pass through where everyone was healed. Wow, imagine if we had that story today, where the entire town that our hospital or clinic was located in, all were healed. What a story that would be. But there was no preferential treatment because he healed all. No questions about where they came from, what caused their problem, what was their background. No preferential. He healed all. And his compassion was revealed in his human touch. However, Christ also had his mind on eternity. You see, because he was always ready and willing to give them more if that's what they wanted. He was ready and willing to say, come unto me. He was ready and willing to say, watch and see. He was ready and willing to say, follow me, if they wanted to. So there's the story of the 10 lepers, and one who came back for more. And Christ was ready. He healed all of them. He even healed the 9 who did not come back for more. But there was something special in his heart for that one who did come back. He was ready and willing to give more if they wanted to, if they wanted it. I want to pause here and ask a question. This is a picture that Dr. An shared of a situation happening in the Ukraine-Poland border. And the situation, you can see that young lady, there's quite a bit of angst, and you wonder what's going on in her heart and in her mind at that moment. Well, apparently, and we don't know if the story is true or not, but it raises an important question for consideration. Apparently, as these women and children were trying to escape the ravages of war, there were some probably well-meaning Americans who were there, who apparently were proclaiming that if they accepted Jesus as their Savior, their problems would be solved. And so that was the reaction they apparently got. So what do you think? Is this approach aligned with Christ's ministry? I mean, I heard a lot of moans, so I'm guessing probably not. But I mean, let's put some words to that, if you don't mind. Just very quick, is somebody willing to share? What do you think of that situation? And I want to say that it's okay if we have different thoughts and perspectives and opinions on this. Because I'll be honest, I'm conflicted in my mind too. But if we can put some words to it, maybe we can find some understanding. So is anyone willing to share? What are your thoughts? Is that aligned with Christ's ministry? Yes. Okay, so they seem to have leapfrogged at least one step, maybe more. Yes.
I think sometimes it's my favorite saying, I guess, is that sometimes we confuse with Matthew 25 when we want to do these things. We do it in the hope that they will see Christ in us, or do we do it because we saw Christ in them? And I think there's a difference in our motivation and how we respond in these circumstances.
Yeah. So recognizing what our motivations are. Sometimes we don't know what our motivations are. Are we crystal clear about our motivations? Anyone else? Yes. Thank you for being here.
Believe that my people stay there only because of the protection they have from Christ.
Wow.
They stay there with life, with death, but they feel the protection.
Where is their protection coming from? Is Christ protecting them even if they're not claiming him? I hope we believe that. What a tragic situation. Now, I am going to say this. We don't know the whole story. We don't even know if that story is true. But an important point for us to remember is, are we meeting their need at that moment, or are we skipping over? Are we really making ourselves relevant for that moment? And that relevance can change over time. It can change as situations change. I believe that what Christ understood is what we call today Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I believe he understood that as human beings, we need our felt needs met. We need to feel that we have food, shelter, and water, and we can survive. And that he understands that we also need safety. And then we can start processing some of the other things in our lives as well. But there are times in our lives where we just hit the rawness of living. And so are we meeting people where they are at the moment that we intersect with them? Are we truly ministering at Christ as Christ ministered. And this is very painful, I know, to consider. But it is important that we think hard about what are those motivations that we have. Is our motivation for ourselves to be known and renowned, or is it simply meeting those needs? Is it the disinterested benevolence? So Jesus knew that they needed more, right? He knows the needs. He knows the real needs as well as our felt needs. But yet he met the needs that they were ready to be met, that they felt needed at that moment. He was ready and willing to meet their basic needs, and even if it meant that they never came back to him again. Even so, he saw what people urgently needed when he encountered them, and he made that his priority as well. So medical missionary work is a word that's often used in the Adventist church. It goes back over 100 years. One of our founders used this word to describe the health work. We use different words today, but it was a very broad and all-encompassing work. And it has been throughout the time of the Adventist church. So what this work does is it brings to humanity the gospel of release from suffering. Is that part of the gospel message? Release of human suffering. It is also considered to be the pioneer work of the gospel, meaning that it goes before, it precedes, it leads much of the rest of the work that the Adventist church is involved in. Christ's healing calls for his disciples to heal the sick and serve the poor. So really, and we borrowed this from our healthcare institution friends, really what we're doing is we're extending the healing ministry of Christ. That is what our goal is. We are invited to be his hands, his feet, to serve, to meet needs, to love people, regardless of what they decide to do after that. So, another difficult question: how? How do we achieve this today? How do we take Christ's example and the design that we see in the model of creation, and how do we really implement it today? So, one of the questions that I ask when I train our church health ministry leaders, I ask them this question after I build a rapport with them, because I don't want to sound mean, but I ask this question: is your health ministry whole? Is your health ministry healthy? Because sometimes we do things with the best of intentions, but we're not necessarily producing healing. We're not necessarily addressing needs. We may not necessarily be really helping people where they are at, because we might be a little bit more concerned about where we are at. Is your health ministry healthy? And I have to ask myself this question as well. In my role, in the work that I do, are we being healthy in how we're doing this? Are we really, really holistic in our approach? Are we addressing all 4 areas in our ministry? And are we sharing that wholeness, that experience of health with others? Or are we just doing things because we have to do them? It's an important question that I have to ask myself over and over again. So do we truly recognize the value of every part of God's holistic design, not just for individuals, but even collectively? Are we whole? Are we truly achieving his wholeness? in how we serve. So the North American division, and this is Elder Bryant, he wants this message to be shared with you. So we believe that replicating the ministry of Jesus is our reason for existence. We believe that this is what we are called to do. So what I want to share with you next is some of the things that we are doing to achieve this in a more strategic way. We're thinking about how to do this. Again, our key word is together, because we know what we've learned is that we can't do this alone. We can't do it ourselves because God created us to be in community. So what are some of the things that the North American division is looking at? So our administration has come up with a 3-pronged approach which is our target, our rally call for the next few years. And we look at this when we look at the model of Christ's teaching again. So in Matthew 4:23, we are told that Jesus went about healing, teaching, and preaching, or making disciples. And so what we have been doing is trying to identify in the Adventist Church also these three approaches, or these 3 arms of our work: the healing, teaching, and discipling part of our work. So we have, this has been a core part of the work of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's what you could call our blueprint to reach the world. And this comprehensive approach has really led to a lot of things developed over the years. For example, we know that our health systems, well, you know this, are sustained in such incredible ways that many others may struggle with, because there's a togetherness and there's a family of support. We know that our health work is the arm of the church that meets the needs of our communities. Many of you are probably working in that way, not just meeting the needs of the patients who come in, but the community surrounding you. This is a quote from Ellen White, again, one of our founders. She says this: "The right arm of the body of truth is to be constantly active, constantly at work, and God will strengthen it. But it is not to be made the body. At the same time, the body is not to say to the arm, 'I have no need of thee.' The body has need of the arm in order to do active, aggressive work." And aggressive in that term is used in a positive sense, not the negative connotation. "Both have their appointed work, and each will suffer great loss if worked independently of the other." So, are we connected? Are we together? It takes an entire church to make a transformative impact on the world. We need our physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, and our social parts of ourselves connected together. So since Jesus cared about the whole man and woman, then each aspect of what makes us whole is tremendous value when it comes to ministering. And I know that this is a keynote of our health institutions as well. He demonstrated his disinterested benevolence. He ministered to the needs of people where they were. And if they only wanted healing and didn't want the spiritual, he met those needs too. And here's a quote that was shared earlier. "Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior mingled with men as one who desired their good. He showed sympathy for them, ministering to their needs, and won their confidence. Then he bade them, 'Follow me.'" There were many steps that led up to that relationship with Christ. He gained their trust, and trust is in short supply these days. Let's be honest. He showed that he was trustworthy. He met their needs not because of what he wanted from them, but simply because he wanted to give them all he could. These are the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, the basics, the foundation of how we seek to serve, how we live a life of compassion. So in the history of the Adventist Church, we've seen a lot of all these areas blossom and do well. Here's some statistics of what is in North America, the different organizational entities that we have here in North America. So of course our beloved health systems with the many institutions that you have associated with your organizations. We have over 900 schools and over 6,500 churches. And this is in the US, Canada, Guam, and Bermuda. What would it be like if every single one of these were activated to share healing? What would it be like? I have to say this carefully, are we lacking in resources when we just look at these numbers? I know we can dig deeper into that story, right? But if we just look at these numbers, if we were to put these on a map, how many areas of the places where we live in could be reached, could receive the healing touch of Jesus, could realize that they are loved, not because of what they can do for us, but simply because we want to love them like Christ does? How many places could be touched? How many people, how many lives, how many hearts could be restored if every single one was activated for the healing ministry? Well, it does take all of us to replicate the ministry of Jesus. Here's a study. The North American division worked with Gallup to do a survey of Americans on their perception of brand awareness, religion, and interests in the survey. And the word health and healthy comes up quite positively in the results. However, what we realized in the survey is that the majority of them were not familiar with our healthcare institutions. They didn't recognize the name Adventist Health or Adventist Healthcare, Advent Health, sorry. They didn't realize that these were Adventist institutions. So few recall being a patient or otherwise connected with the institutions. Of course, this may be that because, they weren't asked specifically about each one of the institutions, but more broadly. So there's more data, more information we need to gather. But it seems like there's a disconnect. If there is truth to this, then what can we do to improve that? What can we do to improve the understanding, the perception, the realization of the connectedness that we all share, that we are together in ministry? So how can we better leverage all of these parts in our healing ministry? Not just one alone, but where do we all intersect? Where do our points meet and complement and support and improve and benefit? What are those points of intersection? What are the resources that we have at our disposal? What this means is the North American Division has voted our mission statement for the next few years as Together in Mission. because that's what we want to do. We have a goal, we have an outcome we're looking for, but it's also the how we do it, and we want to do it together. So these are the images that we see together in mission. This is our strategy. And what we see is that all of these, again, together really exemplify the healing ministry of Jesus. Each branch is doing ministry. We're not separate. We are together. We influence each other. We impact each other's outcomes. So how can we maximize collaboration, partnerships? What can we do together so that we're, of course, recognizing the uniqueness of each? Because that's not what we want to lose. We don't want to lose the unique aspect that each one influences and impacts. That's vital. But where do we see that we are connected? And how do we intersect in those areas? So under the Together in Mission, there have been 3 strategic focus areas that have been identified. And we're going to show a video of Dr. Bryant as he talks about these 3 areas, which are multiply, media, and mentorship. And I will play that now.
The North American Division has always believed in the mission of the church. We have a rich history of spreading God's love as it is reflected in the 3 angels' messages throughout this territory and in foreign lands. We have over 6,000 congregations across this great division and over 1,000 churches planted in the last 8 years. We want to continue to build on those who have gone before us. We stand on their shoulders. God is calling us to continue to build his kingdom in the North American context. On February the 25th, 2021, the North American Division Executive Committee voted a theme for the new quinquennium called Together in Mission, I Will Go. It is a call to increase our efforts in carrying forward the mission of God in a more intentional, collaborative manner. Embedded in this theme is the concept that we are stronger together. We have tremendous resources, and we can make a greater impact for Christ if we can find a way to more strategically align ourselves. If we can find a way to more effectively leverage our strengths, then the sky is the limit as to what God will do in this division. The objective is to find ways in which we can maximize the opportunities that we have in a more collective approach. We have chosen 3 strategic areas in which this collaboration can be exercised across all entities, unions, local conferences, local churches, also across our educational and medical and media institutions. They are media, multiply, and mentorship. We call them the 3 M's: media, multiply, and mentorship. The first M, media. We want to more effectively use media, and especially social media, for mingling with people and for telling the story of the gospel as unveiled in the messages of the 3 angels. We are aiming to train, equip, and dispatch 10,000 digital disciples over the next 5 years. The second M, multiply. We want to multiply the ministry of Jesus, his healing ministry, his teaching ministry, his discipling ministry, his church planting ministry. We want to double down on all that Jesus did. And the third M, mentorship. We want to develop the leaders from our youth and others and ensure that our mission is sustained into the future until Jesus shall come. The method we will use is the one given to us by Jesus Christ himself. Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior mingled with men as one who desired their good. He showed his sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, and won their confidence. Then he bade them, "Follow me." Ministry of Healing, 143 by Ellen G. White. Jesus mingled with people. He showed sympathy for them. He ministered to their needs. He won the confidence of people. And it was only after this did he say, "Come and join the church." It was only after this did he say, "Come and be a disciple. Come and follow me." By God's grace, the North American Division will do what Jesus did. We will mingle with people. We will show sympathy for people. We will minister to the needs of people. And we will then, by the grace of God, win the confidence of people. And then we will say, "Follow me." And because of that, God will do great and marvelous things in the North American Division territory. Our greatest days are not behind us, but they're ahead of us. Pray for us as we with you pray for the outpouring of the latter rain. And together in mission, we will go. God bless you.
So, multiply, media, and mentorship. Are there places of intersection in these areas where we can partner together? So Elder Bryant wanted to share some ideas, some concepts, just to start the thinking process, to prime us for some more conversations that need to happen down the road. But he says this, that I believe that there are greater opportunities for collaboration with our churches, our schools, our medical facilities, and it's capitalizing on our shared desire of delivering the ministry of Jesus to our communities. So, here are some of his thoughts. What if hospitals assisted our local churches in becoming centers of healthy living in their communities? Well, you're doing it with your community health needs assessment, right? Which is available to all churches, all organizations, to help determine what the needs of their community are. This is a clip of a presentation that Dr. Park gave at our mental health summit recently. We are promoting your CHNAs to all of our churches and encouraging them to connect with you so that they are making informed decisions on how to meet needs. Elder Bryant asks, what if we targeted certain geographic or socioeconomic deprived areas in the country and unite our efforts to make a difference? We have not talked about health disparities enough in our church, but we've started to. This is a publication we produced in 2020, 2 years ago now, informing our churches about health disparities and then giving them actionable steps that they can take depending on what their local needs are. What if we could strategically look at some of our major metropolitan areas and start looking at the challenges that they are facing and address them in a concerted effort? So the North American Division has identified St. Louis, Houston, and New York as 3 cities that we want to focus our energies and efforts towards over the next few years. What if we designated healthcare, more healthcare to challenging communities and treated them as mission fields? What if we supported you in the work that you are doing? Is it possible that those 6,500 churches could be a resource for helping to deliver the type of care that you know our communities need? That is one of my goals in my role, is equipping our churches to be healthy and informed in ministering to their community needs. Dr. An wanted to end with this, a biblical vision for collaboration. He shares that the Greek term used for salvation in the New Testament is sozo, which is defined as to save, deliver, protect, heal, preserve, to make whole. In other words, salvation and healing are closely related in the New Testament. Basically, he says, meaning the same thing. And Jesus usually says to the healed, your faith saved you, go in peace. So healing meant salvation and peace. Shalom. We heard that this morning as well. Shalom. It means the restoration of wholeness to the person and restoration to the life of the community. Because wholeness is not just our own personal health, it's the community's health as well. Dr. An adds this about shalom. Shalom in Hebrew is a kind of shorthand for that prophetic dream of a healed world. And it underlies the ancient prophetic insistence on the need for multiple forms of healing, leading to a world of justice and peace. That dream includes the healing of individuals as well as communities and nations, and insists that all have access to the blessings of life that lets each one live an active life, productive and full of years. This dream of a healed world, offering health and wholeness to all humanity, underlines the NAD's three-pronged approach of multiply, media, and mentorship. The final thing I want to share with you is a story that's found in the book of Nehemiah. The city, Jerusalem, had been near destroyed during his time, and he was now living hundreds of miles away. But he had a heart longing for that community. He knew that there was brokenness in that community, not only in the people, but also in the structure of that community. The very infrastructure was broken. And so through prayer and planning, he was strategic. He was able to even convince the government of the nation to help him fund going back to the community and rebuilding. And as he talks to the leaders of this community, he says to them that he was brokenhearted because of the brokenness in that community. But he says to them that God has blessed me enough to come here with these resources for you. This is the hand of the Lord who has led us this far. And when the leaders heard that, they said, let us rise up and build. And then they followed it up with setting their hands to the work. In fact, we find a record in the book of the leaders of the city themselves, along with the community members, building the city together, side by side. The work that we have all accomplished is God's work. The work that I believe is in our hearts is God's work. So I believe the call he's giving us, every one of us, will we build together? Will we build side by side? We have a lot of silos. We have a lot of good reasons to do the work on our own. Believe me, I'm a recovering type A personality. I have good reasons why I should just do things on my own. But it doesn't bring the healing, the shalom that God is wanting to give. So I hope that we can all press together in this work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angie, for a triple header, for taking 3 messages and put them into one. Any questions, comments for Angie before we wrap up? If you're not going to talk, I was sitting here reading and thinking, and let me share a message with you that I got from, some of you remember Ken Denslow, should remember him. Ken was the Ken is the current president of the Lake Union, was an assistant to the president of the North American Division for years. And he just sent me this message a couple weeks ago, actually, when he was supposed to be in meetings. But it's such emblematic, I think, of what you're talking about, Andy. So let me just read a short thing to you. Dick, I'm writing to share a mission story with you. Our daughter and son-in-law are in transition from Keene, Texas to Berrien Springs. Part of that transition leaves them homeless. Between the sale of one home and closing on their new home, they are living in an RV park near Keene for a few weeks. The other day, my son-in-law was talking to their neighbor in the RV park. This man, a retiree from Southern California, asked some questions about their background, eventually getting to the fact that they teach at Southwestern Adventist University. He said they normally didn't have much interest or patience with organized religion, but he had very different views regarding Seventh-day Adventists. The reason that he had had a significant heart issues and been treated at Loma Linda. Actually, was in the hospital there for several weeks. He told about having a roommate who was there with serious health challenges of some sort. These roommates not only shared the room, they also shared a doctor, Anish Razuk. Anish is our senior heart surgeon there. The man telling the story said his roommate had no family, no visitors. He seemed to be alone in the world. Our kid's RV neighbor told her Dr. Razuk would come each Sunday and wash the roommate's hair and trim his toenails. He also would read to him for hours. Our kid's neighbor said, well, I don't generally have much interest in organized religion. With Dr. Razuk, I saw someone who lived his religion, and that is why I see Seventh-day Adventists as different from other religious people. And Ken ends with, I know that you don't always hear the positive stories, thought I would share. That's an example, Angie, of what you're talking about. Any final comments, questions, amens? Yes.
Mentioned some initiatives that you were considering about how to bring the church into helping with healthcare needs and helping to create more of a network in that respect. Do you have any examples of any sort of initiatives in education for the church to render healthcare or to be more involved in the healthcare side of things?
Sure, and there are many different ways I think that can certainly happen. Some examples of where that collaboration is happening. Actually, I could point to our healthcare institutions. They have stories where the CHNAs are being utilized by the churches. We're in that process of training our churches to, some of our churches are ready. Some of them are prime. Some of them have, your own healthcare staff working or attending our churches. So they know what it means to work together. There are others where we need to work on that a little bit more. One of the areas that I'm burdened with right now is the health of our healthcare, the needs of our own staff. And so we have been working on a resource for addressing burnout and addressing the high stress life situations. And we've shared this with our healthcare executives as well, is that we would like to train our churches to be a place of support where your healthcare workers could find a safe place. Where there's none of the, silly arguments that can come up, but simply we're here to love, to encourage, to support, to help prevent. It's a preventive program to help prevent going down that road of burnout. So that's something that's in development. We're developing a grief recovery program as well, because we know that there's been a lot of grief that we've all experienced in some form or another. So those are some of the resources that are being developed. Really, I can say any of the resources that we have from my office you are welcome to take and use if they're appropriate for your setting. We have, yeah, I'll just say that.
Thank you, Angie, once again. I want to go off script for a minute. Many of you have come to know and love Jerry and the impact he's had, not just on bioethics, but on this church in so many different areas. What you may not know is why he's so effective, and she is here with us today. And I want to recognize Dr. Betty Winslow for the years. Truly the wind beneath his wings, and we appreciate it. Thank you, Betty and Jerry. Okay, it's 2 o'clock. I think the next show is on.
If I could just say one thing, sorry. We've been working with Andrews University on a grant from the Lilly Foundation, where we've actually received $1 million grant to develop urban ministry, which is actually training pastors in how to do community health interventions, how to do community health needs assessments. Really, the $5 million grant over 5 years is theirs to lose. They've more or less been told they're going to get it. So looking for a partnership with healthcare in how to actually train and skill pastors in how to do this kind of work and engage with them. So it's just something which sort of follows up from what you're saying, which is already in motion, which I think is a very exciting opportunity for us.
Okay, just didn't have enough faith. Thank you, Jonathan, for that comment. And thank you, Dr. Brauer, for that presentation. And thank you, Dr. Hart, for recognizing the real energy of the Winslow home, the other Dr. Winslow.